Welcome to this session of Workplace Reimagined. My guest today is Mike Hofer, the Executive Human Resources Value Advisor for Regulated Industries at SAP SuccessFactors. Mike, welcome, and thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me today.
We continue our discussion about the idea of the workforce and how it's changing and how it continues to change. And one of the big areas that we've seen is this idea of hiring the cyber workforce. Right. It's a problem not just government has, but industry has. There's too many jobs, not enough people. So let's talk about that a little bit. And what are some of those trends, themes you're seeing inside the federal workforce about the ability to hire and retain these critical people in the cyber world?
There's actually a book called Talent Tectonics. It's written by Dr. Stephen Hunt, and he does a good job of explaining how we have two converging forces, one called digitalization, the other one called demographics, and understanding those and the two impacts that those are the impacts that they have on each other really should be in consideration. So for example, digitization, that is the rapid pace of innovation and the adoption of it. And so obviously in the cyber world, we're seeing a lot of the innovation that's coming very quickly, and we're having to adjust to it. And then, for example, worked with the DoD a couple of years ago where it was autonomous vehicles. And so what's interesting about that is now we have degrees in autonomous vehicles and now AI that weren't there 3 years ago. So we're moving at a very fast pace. And then you look at demographics. Quite, just baseline, people are living longer. In addition to that, 30% of the workforce is over 55. And so you can imagine the retirement cliff that's coming, right? And so a lot of what that we're seeing out there is how are people managing that exit, if you will, of the workforce. And in the fact that we're not having as many babies as we used to. So, we had talked earlier, there's too many jobs and not enough people to fill those jobs.
Let's start with the digitization side, the rapid pace. I think that's a really interesting piece. There's this movement to upskill, reskill the workforce. I think the government recognized this challenge several years ago. Cyber is the probably the most important area where this upskilling, reskilling, is that part of that retention side? Is that part of the conversations you're having and seeing with your clients about how, okay, we have Bill or Mary they've been in the data center, but now they have to understand cloud or whatever the change that's happening. Is that still among the conversations you're seeing?
Yeah, every day. So along those lines, it's really when we start looking at those cyber skills, it's about looking at the skilling and reskilling of their existing workforce even before they start recruiting. So taking the people that have the experience, providing them continuous development and learning throughout their career to enable them to transfer over into cyber type careers. So we're definitely seeing that a lot.
One of the things that I know recently is there's looking at what is a cyber career, right? It used to be, you are a 2210 under this type of blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Now they're saying, wait a minute, but if you work in the CFO's office and you touch IT and you have to worry about the systems, maybe you're cyber too. I think that's the other piece that we're starting to see is that maybe there was actually more cyber workers than we realized, but they just need to be fine-tuned. Is when you talk about fine-tuning the skill sets, what are some of those areas that agencies are starting to really talk through? Are you talking to them about okay, how do we address some of those retention strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the big one is AI, right? And what's interesting is, yes, cybersecurity has a foundation in AI, but AI runs across all of the platforms that the government uses today. And so, when we're working with our customers and the different agencies, it's really how do you prepare for the future with making, AI is coming into the government. How do you get your core data clean? And how do you continue to, do things, the fundamentals like payroll, benefits, those type of things. So it's not just about skilling cyber work type employees. It's also about understanding the impact that it has to your day job from an AI perspective. And it could be finance, could be supply chain, could be HR.
And all of that's really undercut by or underlined by cybersecurity because, again, it's that whole discussion about user experience. If I make it too hard on that payroll person or that acquisition person, they'll either figure a way around it or they get frustrated and leave, and then you have a bigger retention issue. And then the other side is if they make it too easy, you get attacked and your data gets taken or you face ransomware. So it's always about the balance. The other side you mentioned digitization. Let's talk about the other D of the discussion, demographics as well.
Right.
The hiring side, agencies seem to be doing a lot more to say, okay, how can we bring in new people? How can we attract different people? The idea of talent, right? What's that mean? What are some of the trends you're seeing around how agencies are re-looking at, okay, we have a demographic problem. How do we start filling those gaps?
There's two areas that I believe that we have opportunities in and that we work with our customers on. And that is focusing on, one would be baby boomers. And then the second one, which is near and dear to me, would be the neurodiverse workforce. So when you look at the baby boomers, as I said, you've got 30% are 55 and older, so that cliff is coming. And going off traditional hiring methods will not work. So what do we have to think outside the box. With people living longer, more dependency on healthcare, Social Security, baby boomers are very interested in continuing to work and develop. There was a recent article where I read that there was going to be an 800% turnover in border protection. And so that's essentially 200 jobs by 2020, or 2,000 jobs by 2028. Who's going to fill that? Why aren't we considering baby boomers to come back in, ones that are experienced, that have been on the border working, and take care of them? And then lastly, from a neurodiverse perspective, when we look at the statistics for that, 1 in 4 people have some form of neurodiversity. 85% of those with good college education that have neurodiversity are unemployed. That means that you have millions upon millions of candidates that are untouched and accessible for the federal government. As an example, in the civilian side, SAP has done a good job and actually was the pioneer in creating workforce augmentation to employ these people, right? So they're, because of the great opportunity that they have, the skill sets that they have. And not only did we create a hiring program for the autistic community, but also for our managers and our employees beyond that, to continue for learning and development for them as well. And as if the government was to lean in on that, I believe there's huge opportunity in both those categories.
Several agencies, I think, actually are starting to lean in there exactly the way you described it. NGA is an example. I know my colleague Justin Doubleday has written several stories about that. It's really a great news story, because what they are finding, I think, is people who are have autism, or people who are considered neurodiverse, they can have specific focus areas, and maybe you need them to look at this set of data and understand what's in the data. And it's something that I think agencies are starting to come around to really say, okay, how can we make better use because of the demographics issue? One of the things I want to make sure we talk about is this idea of skills-based hiring, because I think that's really important. We're seeing a lot more agencies dip into the pooled hiring idea as well, which I think is really important. You know, the idea of hiring certificates and sharing. Why is this gaining steam? How does this relate back to the 2 Ds that you talked about, demographics and digitalization?
Yeah, so it preloads the candidate pipeline. And by doing that, by coming to the table with a certification, OPM has done a good job doing that, as well as there's other agencies that are looking at ROTC programs, you know, your traditional military program, but making that around skills and development and tying that to the demographics that are coming up through the workforce. And it doesn't necessarily pay attention to the education, but more of the skills and the learning and development. And I think that's pretty exciting.
The change that we've seen in all sectors, technology specifically, is a lot of folks don't need that college education like we thought they did. They can be trained to be computer programmers or developers or work in cyber in a different way that still makes them very qualified and very valuable, but doesn't mean they have gone through that 4-year degree. I think that's a huge change to help meet some of those goals that you're talking about when, hey, we're short on the number of cyber workers, we need more people.
Right.
What do you see agencies starting to warm up to that as you talk to them about this topic or this challenge or this opportunity? Are they starting to come around it, or are they still a little too stuck in their old ways? Like, no, but what about the 4-year degree, Mike?
Yes, I believe agencies have, their heart is in it and they really want to make change. I believe that some of the policies and the procedures and some of the systems just aren't ready to provide that for them, right? Because of the outdated systems within the federal government, because of the inability to have insights into your data to help make decisions, because of the multiple databases, it's hard for them to get a grasp of what that really means and the impact that it can make.
That's such an important point that I want to just take an extra minute and highlight. The system side of HR has been ignored for so long.
So long.
And I think that's a very frustration for a lot of folks in the human resources, the chief human capital officers community, is they have people, but the data and the systems don't necessarily always merge with the people. And I hear all the time, oh, we get 500 candidates, but going through those 500, I mean,
Right.
it takes so much time. How can they kind of be better about it? What can they do to, they can't necessarily buy a new system, but they can do the agile approach, the iterative approach really can benefit them by picking pieces. Are you starting to at least have conversations with clients about where they can improve their HR systems?
We absolutely are. And one of the major focuses would be in the core HR area. Right, this is where everything belongs, all the employee content and all the information. And what's interesting about that is the impact that AI is going to have. How do you prepare your core systems with AI? Because if you don't have a good, clean system, AI will do nothing for you. And so it's going to be important that over the next several years, we focus on centralizing those HR systems, providing those deep and rich insights, and tying that to our workforce planning.
We've been talking about shared services and centralization of HR for a few years now. I think you hit it right on the nose. It's time for that because now more than ever. And the old garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have clean data, you're not going to get good data on the way out. Mike, unfortunately, we're out of time for this session of Workplace Reimagined. I very much enjoyed our conversation, so let me thank my guest. Mike Hofer is the Executive Human Resources Value Advisor for Regulated Industries at SAP SuccessFactors. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
I'm Jason Miller, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more on Workplace Reimagined.